All right, what is up, y'all? Friday episode of GC Live. We hadn't, I don't think, done a Friday one in a while, but figured we would hop on here because Chris and I, have not hopped on all week long. Did not want to go a full week without hopping on, making sure y'all are doing all right, and talking a little transfer portal as sort of week one of the official portal season for this window comes to a close. We're going to get into that, but first, let me tell you about our friend Clint Hammond of CMG Home Loans, ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797, NMLS number 71597. Like we always tell you, if you're not in the market for a home, you're not thinking about buying a home, probably no reason to call Clint. All we ask is if you are considering home ownership, or maybe you own your house and are wanting to buy a different house, give Clint a chance to earn your business by giving him a call, 803-422-6797. You can learn a lot more about his background, sort of some of the features they may have for you at CMG Home Loans by heading on over to ClintHammond.com. Great dude, good friend of mine, great Gamecock as well. As always, we appreciate Clint, who's been supporting this show. We're going on 3 or 4 years now, I think. So big time shout out to Clint. Guys, portal season off and rolling. And I think you're going to start to see this thing. I don't want to predict when the first commitment's going to come, because I know that's something a lot of people have been asking us about. Hey, when does interest, and Chris, we've used the word traction a lot, I feel like, when does interest and traction and kind of mutual interest become commitments? And, South Carolina's still waiting on that, of course, to happen. You're starting to see some visitors roll in, some expected visitors, a couple of those confirmed at this point for this weekend. And then I think next week is where you're really going to start to see guys rolling through Columbia. And it is just different than high school recruiting in that it's all jammed in to a kind of just 3-4 week sprint, basically.
A lot jammed in, man. No 2, 3, 4 year, kind of runways to build relationships with prospects. Sometimes, Wes, some guys come up in the portal that you have a connection to or a prior relationship with, but a lot of times you don't, right? So you're kind of starting fresh. Both sides. Is it a little more transactional at the beginning? Yes. And then eventually, if you do a good job, if you find the good match, you're going to get in some guys that feel like they've been here forever, right? Kyle Kennard, Demetrius Knight. Like we talk about this all the time, finding the right guys. And that goes back to, Wes, something that, I wrote about this morning in the Insider Report on Gamecock Central. A little bit of patience is needed, right? I can guarantee we're not going to exit this portal cycle with South Carolina having 0 commitments. They're going to get some guys. We're less than a week into this thing. Last year, it took, I think, a week for South Carolina to get the first verbal commitment. Portal opened on Monday. Portal remains open. You still got bowls. This year, you have an expanded college football playoff, so guys can still enter anytime leading up to that, anytime after that. So if you're South Carolina, you're in a good position because you just went 9-3. You had a really good year. You've got NIL support this year that's the best that you've had in the portal/NIL era. You have playing time to sell. You're in a good spot. Now, the Gamecocks, Wes, if they wanted, they could make a huge push, go for the first guys, the first wave of guys that enter the portal, and try to fill up the class immediately. But is that the right approach? If you find a guy that you're very convinced of and is a great fit right off the bat, sure. But, and that's not to say they haven't found any, right? This is still a staff that has 8, 9 visits scheduled right now, and that number will increase here, as to your point, in the coming days. But don't mistake the fact that you haven't seen 20 visits happen yet. You haven't seen any verbal commitments. Doesn't mean there's no activity, right? There's a ton going on across the street from Williams-Brice Stadium in that football operations building right now. There's been a lot going on, much more than we've even been able to report or uncover, and we try to report and uncover everything we pretty much possibly can. So a little bit of patience. and things are going to continue to shake out here as the portal season progresses.
Yeah, Chris, and I want to hit on a couple of things there, man. So head on over if you're a lot of you are already subscribers, and so if you are, check out our headquarters, our transfer portal headquarters, and so we already have kind of a running, excuse me, a running list, a running total of guys that are confirmed visitors. So, let that be your guide, but also know that there are going to be a lot more names eventually added to that list of guys that are going to be on campus. And in some cases, as much as we are trying to cover this stuff, and I've seen a couple little things that I try not to let bother me, but frankly, they sometimes do. Like I shouldn't. They're like, this staff is keeping everything so quiet. And I'm like, guys, like there is a lot of information out there about players who are visiting. And then I'm like, all right, are we doing a good enough job of telling everyone where it's at? Like, are y'all seeing this stuff? Just because it's not on Twitter doesn't mean that it's not out there. So we've tried to, Chris, I would say focus everything we're putting out into these landing pages. And so I would encourage everybody to go look at our transfer portal headquarters. We're going to see right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 names of guys that are already sort of locked in with dates. Again, I'm sure I can all but guarantee there's a few guys that are already locked in that are not on that list 100%. Like, we like to be transparent. Like, there are guys we're missing because everything just goes like this, right? Like, everything moves quickly in the portal season. And so are there some guys, frankly, that we already have a pretty good feel are going to visit certain times? We're just looking for a confirmation to put out there publicly. Yes, there are as well. So I have no problem telling people that. So I would encourage you, go check that out if you're a subscriber. And if you're not a subscriber, I mentioned this on my TikTok, Chris, which I started a TikTok. Go ahead and make fun of me. Everybody follow me on there. There's a severe lack of Gamecock coverage on TikTok. So I'm going to start posting some videos on there. I posted this the other day. I got On3 to send me a few codes for some heavier discounts. So I got, let's say 5, 6, 7 of those left. So if you're listening and you're not a subscriber, either hit me up on Twitter, West Metro GC, and apparently some of you can DM me, some of you can't. If you can't DM me, just respond. Just reply to me and say, hey, shoot me a DM. Heard about it. If you're not on Twitter, email me, Wes@GamecockCentral.com. Until we run out, I'll send a couple of these codes to our viewers and listeners here that are not subscribers so they can get in on portal season on Gamecock Central.
Wes, hold on. I got to stop you. Are you saying that the deal is possibly better than the one we already promote on YouTube?
Yes. But there's only like, it's heavily discounted, so it's not like a limited number. It's just like, hey, if you ask for it first, I can give away a certain amount of them.
Yeah, I mean, the one we do on YouTube is a no-brainer too. It's 2 months for $1. So for it to be even better, all I'm saying is if you were just having me on as a guest and I didn't work for Gamecock Central and I did not subscribe, I would probably definitely jump on that. I would want to get that deal.
It's about 30 days better than that deal. We'll
roughly.
So hit me up. God Loves Comics says I've already been hacked on there. Hope not. But anyway, so there's a list on there. Again, going back to the actual coverage itself. And those are kind of just confirmed visits. But starting this week, Nick Sharp from Wake Forest, offensive line target. And that's a guy, Chris, we heard that name pretty early on as one to keep an eye on, right? Michael says, I'm not verified. Hey, Mike, if you're on Twitter, just reply to one of my tweets and say, hey, DM me, or y'all shoot me an email, wes@GamecockCentral.com, and first come, first serve on those codes. But, Chris, Nick Sharp, Wake Forest, one of the early names we heard, Zach Atkins, tight end, Northwest Missouri State. Another example of, hey, you can find guys anywhere. Can't say I've ever watched a Northwest Missouri State football game, but this Zach Atkins kid, South Carolina offer, Ole Miss is involved, Colorado may be involved, I think. Some of this stuff runs together, but lots of big-time, big-name schools already involved with Zach Atkins. So a couple of positions that we know Carolina wants to add at, and a couple of guys that are already Sharp arrived on campus yesterday. Atkins supposed to be in today, is listed as December 13th and 14th. So that's a kind of good little start on where things are at this exact second in terms of guys coming to campus out of the portal.
Yeah, and Atkins, man, it's funny. By the way, spelled differently, no relation to Nate.
No relation.
No relation. We've gotten that right off the bat. Gamecocks have had some success, man, with some tight ends from like smaller schools. I mean, Josh Simon from Western Kentucky, right? That's still a directional school, just one direction, just west, not northwest. G5 school, right? But I mean, Nate Atkins from East Tennessee, no relation to Zach, and Nick Muse from William and Mary, right? Guys that some people said, who the heck is this? Why are we taking this kid? And then they're in the NFL, and they were really good players at South Carolina. Zach Atkins kind of has one of the, I think you could call it like the portal who's who, Wes, because you've got Ole Miss, you've got Colorado. I saw Arkansas, who's apparently, according to Sam Pittman, their head coach, got like 30 portal visits scheduled. They've had a lot of guys leave their team, so they're going to be heavy in the portal this offseason. He just wrapped up a visit there. So Atkins was one of the, remember, this is like the first guy publicly, first guy that we uncovered that South Carolina offered this portal season. Very, very early offer. Bunch of schools jumped in on him, and they got him scheduled in for a visit, which has since shifted, right? It was a different date. Now it's the new date. But still a guy definitely to watch. And I think kind of quietly, that's a position where they would like to take somebody from the portal. Depth purposes, competition, whatever it may be. They do lose Simon. It's a great thing that you have Michael Smith back. You have Brady Hunt back. You have Maurice Brown II back. But you did have a few tight ends leave via the portal this offseason. Makes a lot of sense to try to bring somebody in with experience from the portal that can give you more competition and more depth as well.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And so, Chris, before we dive back into some portal names, there are a couple more I do want to talk about here. Let's talk just briefly about the current team and guys that are definitely coming back, guys that are expected to come back. You're seeing a lot of questions, and you I don't want to make this a hey, subscribe to Gamecock Central the entire show type of show, but you had something on this on the 11th, 2 days ago, and generally we just leave this for subscribers, but I think it is worth mentioning, especially because we got a lot of loyal listeners at this point on here. The Sellers situation. Like, I've seen so many questions about Lenoris Sellers at this point, and I shouldn't even call it the Sellers situation, because the point I'm getting to is there really is no situation. Like, Lenoris Sellers, I mean, what do you think is the best way to say it, Chris? Like, Lenoris Sellers is fully expected to be the quarterback at South Carolina in 2025. Like,
yeah, I feel really good about that scenario.
Yes, don't let the fact that you haven't seen a graphic on Twitter yet change your expectation there. Sellers will be the quarterback. All indications are in 2025.
Yes,
and how he plays in 2025 will determine if he's the quarterback in 2026 or if he's at the NFL draft.
That's right.
You know, which is why, Chris, I'm a big believer. we talk about Carolina having better NIL resources than they ever have. Hey, the other schools are getting better resources too. But I'm a believer you got to do everything in your power to try to put yourself in a situation to just push all the chips into the middle of the table, because you have a generational quarterback coming back in 2025. You got to win with this group, man.
I think it's a really good point, and I think it relates to the team as a whole, right? When you have a guy like Sellers, make sure you can keep him, and that doesn't mean. I think that there's kind of this misunderstanding of, when you talk about keeping players and when you talk about NIL, sometimes there's this rush to judgment. He must be looking around. Oh, he just wants money to stay. And it's not that. Again, think about your own professional career. Put yourself in a player's shoes. You may not want to go anywhere, but there is a market. How many schools do y'all think would love to have Lenoris Sellers as their quarterback? Most, if not all.
No,
right?
Almost all of them.
Almost all. There are very few schools that would look at Lenoris Sellers and say, we're good. We're all set here at quarterback. Not many. And so there is a market. The numbers have gone up a lot, and you can't even compare, Wes. People were doing NIL before NIL. No, the numbers are not even close. Not even close. And so what that means is, to retain your talent, you do have to be well situated in NIL. It doesn't mean you're buying players, doesn't mean you're buying your roster and it's all tied to money. Look at South Carolina, what they've done in recruiting, Wes. Signed their whole class, didn't have anybody flip on signing day. So far, and the portal's still open, so far they haven't lost any big surprises out of the portal. You have to have a combination of all of it, right? You got to be winning, you got to have culture. You've got to have the NIL resources, and right now that's why they're so well positioned. But to go back to your point, you do want to build around Sellers, and he'll help be a selling point on that, right? Receiver, you want to come play with this guy. Running back, you want to come play with this guy, and so on and so forth. But I think also you look at defensively what South Carolina lost from this past season. It's a very Shane Beamer's talked about this. It was great for 2024. It does create some challenges in 2025. And so you don't want to, I don't want to use the word waste, right? But you have a generational quarterback. You don't want to not build around him.
You don't want to miss the opportunity.
You don't want, that's a better way to put it instead of waste. You don't want to miss this window that you have with a guy like him. So what does that mean? Yes, push all your chips to the table to make sure you keep Lenoris Sellers and you build around him offensively, but defensively as well. And the reality of the situation, Wes, it costs to build a roster nowadays. The teams that have the most talent are going to win the most games. That part has not changed. There's a lot of parity in college football, which represents a great opportunity for South Carolina. And so the good news is they've got a great talent, great young talent at the most important position on the field at quarterback.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, man, you should be proud. Like, if you're a South Carolina fan, you should be proud of what has happened so far in terms of the last year or so, in terms of the portal, in terms of NIL and that growth. I mean, I remember following this program when I was much, much younger, and and I went to Carolina as well, so just following it from that side of things too. And I would get annoyed at how people were cynics about things, about South Carolina and how they've done things. And the older I got, the more ingrained I got in how things are done. I started to see why people were cynical. And I was like, South Carolina, kind of going way, way, way back, I would say has always been a little bit known for doing enough to compete, but maybe not doing quite enough to like truly just win and be a blue blood. And are there hurdles? Of course, there are hurdles for every team. Even some of the blue bloods have certain hurdles they have to overcome. Doesn't guarantee you're going to win no matter what you do. But I think Carolina in the NIL era and the transfer portal era has come a long way, man. And I think the combination of Beamer, and the whole family thing and culture and just trying to build around that while also trying to go out and accentuate or supplement your roster with the right portal guys. And I would dare say they're probably going to have to go a little bit heavier in the portal again this year than they even in theory will want to eventually have to do because of what you lose on defense, right? Primarily. Yep. And so all that aside, like you have a great opportunity here if you're South Carolina, and that a lot of things, remember how when you look at the 3 11-win seasons under Spurrier, there was some alignment for you there. The alignment was, and it had nothing to do with NIL or transfer portal, it was that you happen to have guys like Clowney, Alshon, Gilmore, Holloman, all coming through, maybe in my opinion, the actual best one of them all, Lattimore, all coming through the state of South Carolina at the same time. You had a guy like Swearinger who wasn't as highly recruited as some of those other guys, but was coming through at the same time. Then you found Connor Shaw, who, was recruited, but wasn't a 5-star guy from right down the road in Georgia. So you had some alignment in all those guys coming through at the same time. This time it's a little bit different, but I do think you have some alignment and some things coming together. You have some people at the university that get it. And you have a fan base. I think it can still get better in terms of like supporting NIL and Garnet Trust and all those things. But I see a lot of progress with that stuff too. So can you keep it going? Can you take it to the next level? Because if you do, I think this year showed us the blueprint can work. Like the blueprint of what Carolina did in terms of building their roster. It can work. You were literally a couple of plays away from being in the college football playoff. Like, think about that. So the fact that your blueprint has been proven to work, that says something. Now you just have to take it to the next level.
Something that I haven't seen a lot, Wes, since South Carolina started winning more games, even though Shane Beamer's approach has not changed. Nobody's saying, he needs to quit worrying about talking about love so much, right? And it kind of goes back to, and I'm having a little fun with it. I'm not demeaning anybody who said that. I get why people are saying that, because when a team is not winning as much or when they're losing more than they're winning, naturally the fan base is going to go to, all right, how's he acting on the sideline or in the dugout or on the court? What is he saying in press conferences? Like those things, people look for reasons. The reason that, though, I think you dive into it, you got to have great players to win. And the primary reason that South Carolina was better in 2024 in the regular season than they were in 2023 is because they had more talent. And I'm not saying, the staff deserves no credit. No, they do. But that's the primary reason. Like they went out, they kept the talent on the roster, had it for another year. They went out and got some difference makers at multiple positions, including at quarterback, right? And Kyle Kennard, who's just named the best defensive player in the country. They went out and got guys like that. That's the primary reason. But then in this area, you have to be able to keep those guys. And in the NIL era where a lot of guys are, it's kind of pretty transactional, you got to find the right guys and you have to have everybody buy in. There have been some teams that kind of built their team on the back of NIL and the portal that in certain moments they kind of crumbled, right? Ole Miss, they had a good year and they certainly beat South Carolina in Columbia. They also lost to Kentucky. And they had some moments where you're like, is everybody on the same page here? Look at Florida State. Won 2 games, right? Had talent, for sure. They still had talent, but they won 2 games. That's where Shane Beamer's culture comes in. And I think we've talked constantly about his ability to keep the team together even when things get tough. That does matter. It shows through more when you have that talent level that they had this year. So when you go back to signing day, keeping everybody, not losing any of your critical guys so far out of the portal, and being well positioned, those things matter.
Yeah, they do. And hey, shout out Butch. throwing us a super sticker there.
Appreciate you,
that. Hey, Butch, if you got a question, man, we'll move you to the front of the line. If you, it's like if you tip your bouncer under the table and you get to move to the front of the line, we'll move you up, man. If you got a question, hit us with it. One of the questions earlier, and then a comment I saw too, Chris. Let's loop these things together. Comment about the front seven will look very different. Absolutely true. And a question about Andrew Jones, the linebacker at Grambling. And I think that's a valid question because that's a guy a lot of people have been just kind of wondering about, and they've seen the photos of him out there. He looks like he's in the NFL at this point, just physically. Looks like he's about 28 years old and had a huge year at Grambling. And, I would say South Carolina is in that one, would be the way to describe it. He is set for a visit going on next weekend, so not this weekend, next weekend. And, we'll see how it goes when he gets to campus. But certainly at this early point, sounds like South Carolina very much in the mix. And, we expect them to try to take a couple of linebackers who absolutely can come in and play a bit.
Got 3 linebackers, Wes, that are departing. And, the cupboard is not bare on the roster, right? Well, the probably number one guy you look at is J.R. Johnson, someone who played as a true freshman this year, some kind of more than got his feet wet, I would say, but is due to take a big step forward in terms of what the staff is going to expect and need from him next year. And really talented guy, physically has all the tools that you look for, but different than bringing back, having 3 seniors at your disposal, in that rotation. You're going to be losing Debo and Bam and D-Knight. All 3 of those guys, I think, each had their own strengths and brought leadership and brought playmaking ability and like I said, different skill sets. So it's going to be really important for them to go out and get a couple of the right guys, that bring scheme fit and bring experience and can come in and not be as developmental. For these spots, for these linebacker spots, you're looking to go out and find kind of what you did in D-Knight. You're probably not going to be able to find him. He's kind of a unicorn, I think, in some ways, but something close to that, an approximation. South Carolina would be thrilled, I think, if you could get a couple guys along those lines.
Yeah, no doubt. Shout out to Butch and his band, 3 and 20. Hey, Butch, we actually did not do a kickoff party. We're not doing an official kickoff party this past year, but maybe it returns at some point, and we are always looking for musical acts for that. So, man, we'll reach out. Good question here. What do y'all think about DJ Braswell leaving with the room losing most of its production? I think it's a valid question. I do personally think DJ's a talented kid. Like, I think he is, of the guys leaving, he's one of the ones you do kind of circle and say, hey, that's a young player who, like, would you be shocked at all, Chris, if DJ popped up somewhere else, maybe not quite at an SEC school, but then just had a really good, he could even follow the, Rashad Amos is on my mind right now because I saw Rashad is supposed to visit Memphis this weekend, which, of course, Mario Anderson goes to Memphis, rushes for 1,000 yards. That would make a lot of sense. So Rashad, kind of very similar, was a young guy, was not quite in the rotation. For him, there were just fumbling issues, frankly, when he was early at South Carolina, early in his career at South Carolina, and was always thought of, from what I had heard, as being a pretty talented kid. It was just he wasn't quite able to beat out the guys in front of him. And so Braswell, we know was behind, of course, Rocket and Oscar Attaway III. Then you have Jawan Howells in there. Then you have Matt Fuller coming in, who is, a year younger than you, but is pushing for that next spot in the rotation. And he kind of just got lost in that shuffle a bit. Would it shock me if Braswell went to like a Memphis and was was really good there, no, that would not shock me at all, because I remember the word, and I remember talking to Mo Hardesty actually about Braswell and had several conversations about him. So that, and just him being very high on him. So I think for Braswell, yes, a pretty talented kid, but I just think Carolina has other plans at that position, it seems like.
Yeah, it seems like, not that some bad breakup or anything. It's just I think he sees the potential to play more elsewhere. And these conversations happen at the end of the season, Wes, where they kind of outline here's what we think, here's the direction we're going, here's what the depth chart's going to look like, here's what we're looking to do this offseason as far as personnel. And then obviously players are going to have their own goals as well. So, I mean, Braswell, remember that Kentucky game, Spencer Rattler saying, hey, he won the game with the block that he threw, and Rattler delivered that touchdown pass to Xavier Leggett. He's got talent. He's got speed. So we'll be interested to see where he lands, and won't be surprised if he pops up soon or a year or two down the road as somebody who's making some things happen at the college level as well.
Yeah, no doubt. Butch also says that the insider feel that Fuller will take the load this year at running back, or we're relying on Portal. I think that answer is to be determined in terms of who gets the bulk of the carries. I mean, you hop in, Chris. I think we do know they are looking for Portal help at running back. Like that part is definitely clear. The question sort of becomes, all right, if they bring in like a Rocket Sanders level player, then yeah, that guy probably will shoot right up there to the top of the depth chart and be a huge part of what they do in terms of first couple of carries, in a game.
Yeah.
Chris, I was going to say, if they get more of like a rotational guy, then, you've got Attaway more than likely coming back. You've got Fuller, who I think is a super talented kid. And we saw flashes this year of Jawan as well.
Yeah, I think it just depends. Exactly. Transfer portal, we do know, Wes, that South Carolina is looking for another back in the transfer portal. And so the question there becomes, well, who is it, right? And what does that mean? It could be a person that the staff says, hey, this guy will come in and give us some depth. Maybe he gets on campus and gives you more than depth. Maybe you think, hey, this guy started at his previous school. He's a starter caliber player. But then he comes in and some of those other players that you've mentioned beats him out, right? We don't really know yet. I think there's going to be more running backs throughout the portal window that jump into the portal. So we might not even have a great sense for what that position looks like. I don't know if we've reported on any running backs quite yet, Wes. There's some very good ones in the portal. I haven't seen any that have been really, really linked to South Carolina. So let's kind of see how that progresses and how that goes. But I think they'll have some options. And you do definitely hear a lot of good things from this past season about Fuller with, the way he runs, his body type, physically very impressive kid, very productive in high school. So he's certainly one to watch.
Yeah, no doubt. I'll mute Chris real quick as he is typing furiously over there. The guys, I think patience at the running back position is one of those specifically, like we've been saying, hey, be patient at several of these spots. I think that's one where specifically because you're not in a position where you're going to be taking 2, 3, 4 running backs. It's more than likely going to be, you find a guy and you take him. So you don't have to necessarily be super active in trying to take one right off the bat at that position. Are they being active behind the scenes in terms of trying to figure out who they really want to target? Absolutely. But in terms of public stuff like that, it is pretty quiet at that position so far. There was a question / statement about Kyle Kennard, and it does appear on his Instagram, Chris, that he is officially declared for the NFL draft, which, we knew this would be his last year at South Carolina. I guess the question is, does that mean he is not playing in the bowl game?
Yeah, I'm thinking, and I want to be clear. I have not confirmed this, so we're not sure. I'm not reporting it. Please don't go on Twitter and say I'm reporting that he's not playing in the bowl game. I'm giving my expectation is that he won't. That's my expectation, especially in light of this news. So we'll see. But man, well deserved for Kyle. I mean, just a phenomenal season. Took a great approach here at South Carolina. So super happy for him.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Let's move it forward, Chris, and we'll try to get a final word on what exactly that may mean for him. But a guy people are really wanting about, Casey Concepcion from NC State. News breaks earlier this week, South Carolina in the top 6, and I mean this kid easily one of the best receivers out there in the portal. What do you think the chances are for South Carolina here?
I mean, kind of hard to measure right now. I'll be honest, Wes. I was a little surprised when he put out the top 6 that South Carolina was already in there. This was a guy that was pretty obvious as someone that you would at least kick the tires on. I mean, you go back, you look at what he's done, you look at the film, his production at NC State. He's from Charlotte. He played at NC State. Like, it makes a lot of sense. And so you expected South Carolina would dig around and eval him and see if it might be a fit. I just didn't know how much traction there would be. And then when that top 6 came out, you kind of got the sense, okay, there's probably some others like Alabama where he was at least yesterday, I think, Wes, that might be a little bit ahead. But it does seem like South Carolina is, I think maybe the best way to put it, part of the conversation with KC Concepcion. And he, again, really, really productive player. You can do a lot of different things with him. Receiver's a position where a lot of people want names. They want to know where it's going. He's one of a few that they've continued to work, and we'll see where it goes. I think it would not be a big surprise if he ends up coming in on a visit, but nothing confirmed so far.
Yeah, and Chris, there are a lot of portal receivers, like just in general. Like you start looking at the different positions in the portal, there are receivers everywhere. And, I think for Carolina, if you can make it work, like depending on what he's looking for in terms of NIL and all those things, I mean, this is one of the guys you look at and say, all right, he's a no-brainer talent. It's just a matter of, does he fit in with everything else you're trying to do? But I was watching some of his highlights today, man. And I mean, he, to me, honestly would be like kind of in that category of almost like a Rocket or a Spencer, in that they've done it at the Power 4 level. So there's like little to no risk if it makes sense on all other levels. Like from a talent evaluation standpoint, this dude has already proven everything you could possibly need to prove in terms of being an impact guy. I think the most difficult thing in portal recruiting right now for staffs is to evaluate which former high school 4- and 5-star guys who have not played a ton in college, which ones are busts and which ones just haven't kind of got going yet.
Yeah, I think that I gave this example. I can't remember. Maybe we were talking about Kelby Collins from Florida, or maybe it was another recruit, Wes. There's so many. Even right now, I keep saying the list is going to grow. That might be bad for me because I'm having trouble coming up with some guys. But you look at Monkel Goodwine, right? Like former 4-star recruit, not just a 4-star, a top 100 guy, very highly sought after, signed with Bama. And then you looked at his time at Bama, which wasn't just 1 year, and he had played in like 2 games. That's it. But then you remember, well, Bama's got a lot of really good players on their football team. They've churned out a lot of NFL talent over the last few years. And Monkel Goodwine gets here and certainly looks like he belongs and is going to play a much bigger role even next year. But he got in that rotation this year. Staff seems happy with him. He's done some good things. Clearly, the talent's there. So sometimes guys need to change their scenery. Sometimes they haven't had long enough to develop. There could be all sorts of factors that play in. I agree with you. That is one of the things that you have to consider. And that's why you don't see in portal recruiting, teams have really good transfer classes like the Gamecocks had last year. It's going to be a mix. It's going to be a Rocket Sanders, former 1,400-yard rusher. But then it's going to be, oh, here's this guy from Charlotte, Demetrius Knight. Looks like he might project to the SEC level, and certainly he did. So you're not going to see all blue chippers in a class. You don't have to have a class full of blue chippers in the transfer portal to put together a really good class.
Yeah, for sure, man. All right, so before we close it out and get to the weekend, let me tell you about our friends over at Game Time. You're already familiar with them because we've talked about them a bunch of times already, but GameTime.co is the website you should go to, or easiest way to probably do it, just download the Game Time app. Of course, everybody loves going to live events for the holidays, and also makes a great gift if you get somebody tickets to an event for the holidays. I was telling everybody earlier, I went to TSO, Trans-Siberian Orchestra at CLA yesterday. Awesome time, incredible show. So if live events are your thing, obviously everybody here loves football, but this can be for concerts. This can be for comedy shows as well. And Game Time is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means bringing people together at live events. They got a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets for live events even easier. What Game Time Picks does is it filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Of course, what I always tell y'all, toggle the all-in pricing button on as well so you get no surprise fees at checkout. And, of course, as always, use code ON3 for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem code ON3 for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download Game Time today, again, at GameTime.co or just searching for Game Time on all the app stores. All right, Chris, let's close it out, man. I think one of the most underrated things to happen for South Carolina this week, the return of Nick Barrett on the defensive line. I feel like you are starting to see the pieces of the puzzle come together for that position in 2025. You added Xavion Hardy. You had a couple of incoming freshmen. You get Nick Barrett back. You talked about Goodwine a second ago. And now if you can add 2 or 3 portal contributors at varying levels, then you sort of see what that position is going to look like next season.
Yeah, Barrett, a guy that last season when he played, I keep going back between last season, this season, whatever, 2024 season, let's call it that. When he played and he was able to preserve his red shirt, which is why he can come back, it was, 10, 20, 25 snaps a game. He might see that go up next year, depending on what the portal haul looks like. But he's someone where you know what you're getting. Reliable, big body, strong in the lower body, can come in. We've seen South Carolina employ him in goal line packages, short yardage packages. So a valuable get. Is he a superstar? No. But you need depth on your team, a defensive tackle. That's one reason why South Carolina was so good this year at that position. You need guys where you know what you're getting, right? You could say, get somebody, get a fourth guy from the portal. Then you start getting into, do you know what you're getting? Because it's a very short evaluation window. You know what you're getting with Barrett. And I think that was kind of a quiet, really good retention for South Carolina.
Yeah, no doubt. Coleman asks, comp on Hardy. I don't know, man. I would say, y'all know we don't like comps a ton here, but one guy that popped into my head, and then interestingly enough, Darren Usher kind of mentioned him as well, was he is kind of like a TJ Sanders in that, and that's not to say they're exact carbon copies, but you're talking about an athletic sort of pass rushing inside guy. Hardy, maybe even a little bit bigger, a little bit taller than TJ, but that is your perfect world comparison. If Hardy can be TJ, then obviously you're very, very happy. So nobody's saying he's definitely going to be TJ. He's got to come in and prove that, but that would be sort of your top if he comes in and really pans out maybe your top comparison for what he could be for South Carolina. So, all right, y'all. I think we're going to get on out of here. Hopefully that is a little quick, I guess, rundown of what's going on in the portal right now. I'm sure we missed some stuff, but wanted to hop on and let y'all know what was going on. As always, come check us out on GamecockCentral.com. And like I told the folks earlier, hit me up, shoot me an email, wes@GamecockCentral.com, or hit me up on Twitter, reply to me on there. I've already had 2 people claim codes from earlier in the show. So a few of those are left. Hit me up. I'll shoot you a code that will get you a heavily discounted deal on Gamecock Central if you are not already a subscriber. So, all right, for Chris, I'm Wes. Y'all have a good one, and we'll see y'all.